Today we're learning English with a TV series, Fallout, a new adaptation of a super popular video game franchise. The story takes place hundreds of years after a nuclear war. People have to survive in a tough wasteland filled with radiation, strange mutated creatures, and barely any supplies. A part of the population took shelter in giant underground bunkers called vaults. In the series, we follow the story of Lucy, who was born in a vault, and in the first episode we see her leaving her vault for the very first time and getting to discover how rough things got on the surface. Now, before we get started, if you are new to our channel, the method we use here is very simple. You will first watch the scene with the subtitles, then you will learn some of the most important vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation, and finally, you'll test your comprehension by watching the clip one more time, this time without subtitles. Guys, if you haven't yet done so, we do ask you to subscribe to our channel because every single week we help learners just like you understand your favorite movies and TV series without getting lost, without missing the jokes, and without subtitles.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave him alone. Now, I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances, but at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene. Now, if your instinct is to harm me, as a person simply trying to de-escalate a conflict, then I'll have to assume of the two of you, you are likely the primary aggressor. In which case, I think everyone in this town would agree the force is justified. Unless you willingly stand down now.
Fucking vault dwellers.
So Ethan, let's break down the scene into smaller chunks and explain the words one by one.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave him alone. Now, I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances.
The way she talks is a little bit like odd.
Yeah, she's been stuck in a vault for too long. She's forgotten how to speak colloquially.
So her speech is rather formal, but that gives us an opportunity to explore all this nice vocabulary. Let's start with the word acknowledge. Can you define it, Ethan?
To acknowledge means that you are recognizing or you're admitting something. So you might acknowledge that someone did a great job on a presentation, for example.
Yes, then she says that I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances. Circumstances in this context would be like with your background story, with your situation. Yeah, so circumstance is like something surrounding your situation.
Now, I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances.
There's a nice connected speech here that I'm unfamiliar. We've seen it a lot of times in our lessons. Yeah, this very common pattern when sound T stands between two vowels, that it turns into an American T sounding like duh, that I'm unfamiliar, and then she links all three words together. Yeah, that I'm unfamiliar. Unfamiliar would be like I know nothing about. Would you, like, if you try to paraphrase her sentence into normal colloquial speech, how would you say that?
I admit that I'm not familiar with your circumstances. I admit that I don't know all the details of the situation.
That's a very valuable skill of an English learner to develop. So every time you guys try to learn a new word, always remember to check up some synonyms, because synonyms will help you get better at paraphrasing. And at the very beginning, she says, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave him alone.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave him alone.
Right? So the connected speech here would be have to turning into have to. That happens all the time.
And it even continues with leave him alone. That all links together. We drop the H in him, becomes im, leave him alone.
But at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene.
Okay, again, a bunch of so formal words. right? I like the phrase at first glance. It's synonymous to at first sight, right? It means that you looked at something very superficially without analyzing, going too deep about it.
I might just comment too, at first glance, we have another really nice way to use glance. It could be like, could you take a glance at this? Meaning, could you take a quick look at this? And a glance is to emphasize the fastness of it. If I want to say that it's going to be quick, it won't take you long. But if I say, could you take a look at this? Maybe you feel like it's a bigger obligation. And if I say, take a glance. Yeah, if someone asks you like, Ksenia, did you read that document? You could say, oh, I had a glance at it. Meaning that maybe you quickly skimmed through it or something, but you haven't deeply read it and analyzed it yet.
Could you define the word treatment in this context? What does it mean, treatment?
Treatment comes from treat. We have a really nice couple of lessons on word formation, which is a way to really expand your vocabulary. So we can see that here, that we added meant to treat to turning it into a noun, from a verb into a noun. So it's the way that someone is being treated.
Yeah, she's like talking about this mutant, this ghost, how he behaves towards that man we saw at the beginning of the scene lying on the floor, right?
Now, isn't it just so frustrating when you are writing something or you get an opportunity to speak in English and a word that you know you've seen, you know you've learned, simply will not come to your mouth? For example, you've just learned these words, acknowledge and treatment. Let's quickly test how well you remember them. So what does the word acknowledge mean? Additional knowledge, become knowledgeable in some area, admit or recognize something. How about this word, treatment? In the context of unfair treatment, what does it mean? Illegal medication, manner of behavior towards others, agreement between two people. So if you got those right, congratulations. But if you got into a conversation tomorrow and you had to use one of those words, do you think it would come to you effortlessly? Trust me, I've been there. What was really revolutionary for me was discovering spaced repetition flashcards, which test you on the new word or expression right when you're about to forget them. That way, it gets added to your long-term memory and it's available for you when you get an opportunity to use it. Well, I have something really great for you. We have created some flashcards using this innovative spaced repetition technology for all of the words in today's lesson. That way, next time you get into a conversation, you will be able to use these words naturally. Aw, yeah.
But at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene.
When you're obliged to do something, you feel obligated to do that. You feel that you have no other choice.
It's your duty.
It's your duty, exactly. Yeah. There are a couple of nice collocations, and again, coming back to word formation, there are a couple of other forms with the same root. Could you expand on that a little bit?
From obliged, you have obligate. So if you obligate someone to do something, you require them to do it. You make it their responsibility to do that thing. It's really interesting too, because do you remember, Ksenia, how you say thank you in Portuguese?
Obrigada.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we have a way, we don't use it much nowadays, but you can say much obliged as a way to say that, you're grateful, or there's no problem, or it's nice to meet someone.
And what's happening with the word intervene here? So intervene is to prevent, like to jump into a situation in order to help it, to help resolve it or stop it from happening, right? But there is this connected speech.
Yeah, so we see this too in a lot of words that have this NT. So international, internet, and here it's the same, that we have INT, so it becomes intervene.
So Ethan, let me actually take a quick pause here to share this fun trivia with you. I learned it from one of our video producers. So this game, The movie is an adaptation of this game franchise, right? So in one of the games, Matthew Perry, Chandler from Friends, was voicing one of the characters.
Fallout is just bigger and smarter than any game I've played before. There's just amazing amounts of things to do, and I like the idea that you can, sort of pick what you're going to say to somebody and go on all these quests, and it's just this gigantic world that seems sort of endless. Like I said, baby, all Benny needs is a stealth boy and a bobby pin.
Now, if your instinct is to harm me, as a person simply trying to de-escalate a conflict, then I'll have to assume of the two of you, you are likely the primary aggressor.
So she's talking about instinct. If your instinct is to harm me, what does it mean? What does the word instinct mean?
We think of instinct a lot with animals, for example. That I have a dog, you see these sort of instinctual, that's an adjective, instinctual actions all the time, that they know how to do things without anyone teaching them. So dogs have much stronger instincts than humans do. But we have one that's very famous, for example, is the fight or flight instinct. That if you're put it into a corner, you're put into a dangerous situation, your instinct will be either to fight, to go up against the danger, or flight, meaning to take flight, which is to flee, to run away. So, yeah, maybe people can comment if they think they have a fight or a flight instinct. I think that I probably would usually have more the flight instinct.
Here, I think
about you,
that's
Ksenia?
what she refers to. She says, like, if your instinct is to harm me, so his instinct is to fight.
He's a fighter
first.
for sure.
He's a fighter. For me, I don't know. It depends on the situation. Probably I would want to verbally defend myself, not physically. So there is, again, a nice connected speech pattern. She says, simply trying to de-escalate. It's a little bit tricky here because there are two d. So two between trying and de-escalate turns into da. Trying da. And we have here a drop of the nasal sound, this ng, this g at the end of trying. It's reduced, right? So it's pronounced as trying da. Could you define the word de-escalate here?
Yeah, I wanted to say too that maybe people's instinct here would be to read that something like deescalate. If you're relying too much on your eyes, so pay attention. There's actually two syllables here. De,
Good point.
escalate. And this again is word formation. It's de means to lower something, to undo something. So if something escalates, it means that it's increasing in intensity. She's trying to lower the intensity or de-escalate it. So basically there's this conflict between that man who's on the ground and this not so handsome looking gentleman with the cowboy hat. And she's trying to be the peacemaker, prevent it from turning into something violent.
So we already mentioned that we assume that he's a fighter type of guy. So, and she also calls him like a primary aggressor. Who would be a primary aggressor?
The primary aggressor would be the person who starts the fight. So this person looks like he started the fight and the other guy was just defending himself. Aggressor probably comes from aggressive. If someone is aggressive, it means that they're pretty belligerent. They tend to start conflicts. And primary is a formal way to say first. So it's the first person who starts conflict. So instead of primary aggressor, that sounds really formal. Maybe you could say, you're likely the person who started it.
She also starts the sentence with like, I'll have to assume of the two of you. And here she refers to these two people, one who was offended, or I don't know, attacked by this mutant. And another is the victim, exactly, thank you. So the victim and the villain.
In which case, I think everyone in this town would agree the force is justified. Unless you willingly stand down now.
Fucking fault. Well,
Okay. So Lucy gives him a choice here, right? Let's first define the word justified. What does it mean?
It means that there's good reason to do it or that it's fair. Often we'll say this, your actions were justified or are justified, meaning that they were called for in that situation.
You remember that we were discussing that Lucy assumed that ghoul, him being the primary aggressor. So in this case, if he is that aggressive, then using force, using weapon will be justified. A small comment on would agree this grammar point here. She uses would instead of will because it's like an imaginary situation, right? Like there are no people to ask right now. Another grammar point would be with the using of word unless, right? It's the same as except if. It introduces into the sentence this one circumstance which would change the flow of events. Yeah. So she says, like, unless you willingly stand down now, she will use the weapon if he doesn't stand down. Yeah. By the way, what does stand down mean?
So if you stand down, you decide to, we saw this word de-escalate before, so you decide to back off or to let it go. So to not take that conflictive action that you were planning to do. You might not hear police, for example, if they have a criminal cornered who has a weapon, they might say, stand down, drop your weapon, stand down.
Yeah. And if you're doing it willingly?
Yeah, if you do it willingly, you do it because you choose to, because you want to.
Fucking vault dwellers.
So she says, fucking vault dwellers. Somehow she wasn't impressed by Lucy's voice, or maybe her formal speech.
Her speech.
Or maybe
Yeah,
her speech.
probably.
Yeah, her naivety, maybe, because she's not aware of how to deal with this mutant, right? And he thinks that the power of her words would make him stand down. So, vault dwellers, could you define these two words, please?
Yeah, if you dwell somewhere, it's another way to say that you live somewhere. And so it's being turned into a noun, like a dweller, someone who habitates or who lives in a place. And we talked about, right, in the intro that she was living in a vault.
Yeah.
A vault is like, banks have vaults to keep the money safe. So she was in a shelter that was protected. So basically this woman is sort of insulting her. She uses the F-bomb here and uses vault dweller to, I think, in a not so complimentary way, refer to her. And of course, fans of this franchise would know that in the Fallout universe, vault dwellers are these people who came out of the vault, and this protagonist, Lucy, is one of these vault dwellers.
Amazing. Now, let's continue watching the scene and see how Lucy deals with the ghoul.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
She said stand down. Titus of the Brotherhood of Steel, stand down or be cut down.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
So
she has a savior.
Yeah, she has a friend, but to be honest, I have no idea what's going on here because I haven't played the game and I haven't watched the TV show yet. Probably I would want to check it out. How about you, Ethan?
Yeah, it's making me curious. It seems very action-packed, and I'm really itching to know who this Knight Titus of the Brotherhood of Steel, her savior, is.
Knight Titus, such a formal introduction, right? Knight Titus of the Brotherhood of Steel. So who is the Knight?
People who are fans of any sort of medieval show probably have seen this before. It's someone who's wearing a suit of armor. So this is like a futuristic knight, right? He even has a jetpack so he can fly.
So, Ethan, thank you so much for helping me define all the words and expressions. Guys, just reminding you to review and learn all the words with the deck of flashcards we created for this lesson. And now it's time to test your comprehension by watching the clip one more time, this time without subtitles.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave him alone. Now, I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances, but at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene. Now, if your instinct is to harm me, as a person simply trying to de-escalate a conflict, then I'll have to assume of the two of you, you are likely the primary aggressor. In which case, I think everyone in this town would agree the force is justified. Unless you willingly stand down now.
Fucking fault dwellers.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
She said stand down. Titus of the Brotherhood of Steel, stand down or be cut down.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Thank you so much for watching this lesson, sharing your comments and suggestions for the next lesson, and also practicing the vocabulary with our flashcards on the Real Life English app. I'm looking forward for the next lesson, and if you enjoy learning English with us, check this lesson next.
A long time ago, I met a man here on the beach. He was wise and brave and kind and noble. From the moment I first saw him, I knew that I had never met a man like him before.